Good morning. Today we are doing our second day of using slope-intercept form as well as using point-slope form. So we're going to start with this form here, which is point-slope form, because we need a point and a slope, and we're going to solve it to get slope-intercept form and then graph. I'm going to apologize in advance. I know these graphs are a little bit small. Do your best to graph on the small graphs. If you need help, please let me know, and I can get you a bigger graph, okay? So first we're going to start, use the information to write an equation in point-slope form. That's this form right there. So remember, anything that's just a letter, y, you're going to write the letter y. If it says y1, that means from your point, this is our first x and our second, or our first y as well. First point, x and y. So it says, our equation, I'm going to start over here, says y minus, because there's a negative sign there, y1. And y1 right here is really the number -9. I know two numbers next to each other make a positive. Two negatives next to each other make a positive. Then it says equals m, and m is our slope, so we know m is 2. And then in parentheses it says x, right there, minus x1, which is -4. Again, two negatives next to each other make a positive. So we're going to solve this. I know there's not a ton of room here. Use the margins to the side over here if you need to solve as well. Whenever we have parentheses, we're going to distribute or draw our box. Our teacher up front is the 2, and on top in our classroom we have x plus 4. So if we multiply, 2 times x is 2x, 2 times 4 is 8. So I'm going to rewrite what I have. I have y plus 9. This is where you're going to have to use your small handwriting skills. If you can't write small, practice, try. And we want to get y by itself. So we need to get rid of this plus 9, so I'm going to subtract 9. Subtracting 9, those go away. Positive and -9 eliminate. And we have y equals, there's 2x, we didn't do anything with the 2x. And then 8 minus 9. There's more negatives, so 8 minus 9 would be a -1. 9 minus 8 is 1. So here's our equation that we are going to graph. If it helps you to identify m and b, do that first. I know m in this equation, mx, so m is 2, or as a fraction, 2 over 1. And b, where we begin at the end here, is -1. So we're going to begin on our y-axis at -1. B is for begin. Begin at -1, so down 1. And then our slope, rise over run. So rise 2, up 1, 2, and then 1 to the right. Up 2, up 1, 2, and 1 to the right. Up 1, 2, 1 to the right. Again, up 2, 1 to the right. Or the opposite would be down 2, 1 to the left. Down 2, 1 to the left. And then draw our line through. Ooh, that was not very straight. Try and draw a straight line. Alright, let's try our second one here. This one's a little bit more challenging because they don't tell us the slope. We need to start with point-slope form, this equation up here at the top. So we need to find our slope. So I'm going to label our points x, y, first point, and x, y, second point. And I'm going to use my slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to find my slope. So I'm going to plug this in. y2 is really -4 minus y1 right here, which is 2. Then on the bottom, we have x2 right here, which is 4, minus x1, which is 1. So we're going to simplify. Negative 4 minus 2, they're all negative, so it's a negative 6. And then 4 minus 1 is 3. So we have negative 6 over 3, which is really, if we divide by 3, negative 2 over 1. For our problem up here, I'm going to leave it as negative 2. When we graph, we're probably going to want that as a fraction. So this is m. We found m, our slope. So let's write our equation up here in point slope form. It says y minus y1, which is 2. Again, it doesn't matter which point you pick. I'm just going to pick this point because they're already labeled with 1s, like our equation asks. Equals, and then m, which is negative 2, and then in parentheses, x minus x1 right here, which is 1. So let's solve this. Let's distribute with our box here. We have a negative 2 out front, and then x minus 1. So when we multiply negative 2 times x, just put them together, negative 2x. A negative times a negative, I know, makes a positive. 2 times 1 is 2. So I'm going to rewrite what I have. I have y minus 2 equal to negative 2x plus 2. And our goal is to get y all by itself. So all we have to do to get rid of this negative 2 is the opposite, add 2. So we have y equals negative 2x, and 2 plus 2 is 4. So here's our equation. If you need to identify m and b before you graph, m in front of our x is negative 2, or as a fraction, negative 2 over 1, and b is 4 at the end there. It's this form right here. So we're going to begin right here at 4 on our y-axis, up 4. And then m, our slope, is rise over run. So negative 2 is not up, it's down 2 and 1 to the right. So down 1, 2 from that point, 1 to the right. Down 2, 1 to the right. Down 2, 1 to the right, and so on. Or we can do the opposite and go up 2, 1 to the left. Hopefully this last part, graphing, you should be able to do because we've spent a lot of time graphing. If that's still confusing, I would suggest asking questions or staying after school to get some extra support to make sure you know how to graph. Let's go on to the next slide. This one, same thing, I just was nicer and gave you some more room. So use the information to write an equation in point-slope form. Convert to slope-intercept form. So I'm going to write point-slope form. If you're not sure what it is, look at the wall. It says y minus y1 equals our slope, x minus x1 in parentheses. So our slope really is the letter m, and here's our point, x1, y1. So I'm going to plug everything in that I know. So y minus y1, which is really 0, equals m, and m is negative 1. We plug that in. Then in parentheses, x minus x1, which is 2. So first, let's get rid of these parentheses by distributing, drawing our box. Out front, our teacher is negative 1, and our classroom is x minus 2. We're distributing, multiplying. I know negative 1 times x is just negative 1x. A negative times a negative makes a positive, and 1 times 2 is 2. So we have y minus 0. Well, y minus nothing is just y. We really don't need minus 0. So we have y equals negative 1x plus 2, All I did was rewrite what's inside our box. So that's it. This is solved for y. This is in slope-intercept form. We have a slope, m, and we have an intercept, b. So if it helps you to identify or write out m and b, do that. M is -1 as a fraction, 1 over 1, and b is 2. So let's begin. B is for begin. Begin at 2, up 1, 2. And then our slope, -1 is not up, it's down. Remember, slope is always rise over run. Rise meaning we're going up and down first, then left to right. So down 1, and positive numbers are to the right. Down 1, and to the right. Down 1, and to the right. Down 1, to the right. Or the opposite, up 1, and to the left. Up 1, to the left. So we'll draw your line through, and make sure to put arrows on both ends. A couple people have been forgetting to actually draw their line through the points. We need that point, or we need the line, otherwise it's just a bunch of points. It's a scatter plot. Alright, on to slide 3. Use the information to write an equation in point-slope form. So that is what we've been using. Y minus y1 equals our slope. X minus x1. Again, it's on the wall if you need it. So don't let this confuse you. Remember, we learned f of x is a fancy way of saying y. So this point, x is -2, and y is also -2. And over here, our point, same thing. F of x is a fancy way of saying y. So our point is 4, -8. This one we don't have our slope, so we need to find our slope using our slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When you take your MCA test, this equation will be given to you. This equation will be given to you. You just need to know how to use them. Okay? So I'm going to label my points. X, y, that's my first point. X, y, that's my second point. And then we're just going to plug in what we know. y2 is -8 minus y1, which is -2. Two negatives make a positive. Then on the bottom, x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is a -2. Again, two negatives there make a positive. Don't forget that there's always a negative or a minus from the equation. So -8 plus 2, there's more negatives. 8 minus 2 is 6. So a different sign we subtracted. And there's more negatives, so it's a -6. 4 plus 2 is 6. So our slope is really just a -6 divided by 6, which is 1. So let's write our equation in point-slope form. We can use either point. I'm just going to use the first one because they're smaller and they're already labeled with 1s. So y minus y1, which is really -2. Those make a positive, equal to m, and our slope we just found was -1. And then x minus x1 right here, which is also a -2. Those two negatives also make a positive. Let's draw our line down. We need to distribute or get rid of our parentheses. So we're going to multiply. -1's out front, and then we have x plus 2. So -1 times x is just -1x. -1 times 2, well, a negative times a positive is a negative. 1 times 2 is just 2. So let's rewrite what we have. We have y plus 2 equals, and then whatever's inside, -1x minus 2. And our goal is to get slope-intercept form, or we want y equals mx plus b. So we want y by itself, so I'm going to subtract 2. Those eliminate, and we have y equals -1x. And I owe you $2, now I owe you $2 more, I now owe you $4. They're all negatives. So m and b are what we need to solve or find. M in front of our x is -1 as a fraction over 1, and b is -4. So we're going to begin at -4 on our y-axis. So right here is -4, and our slope is down 1 because it's negative, and 1 to the right because positive 1's to the right. So from here, down 1 and to the right. Down 1 and to the right. Or the opposite, up 1 to the left. Up 1 to the left. Up 1 and left 1. And draw our line through it. Put your arrows on the ends, and that's it. If you look back at this, it looks like a lot of work, but we've already learned how to find slope, we've already learned how to write an equation, and we should know how to solve for y. It's just reviewing a lot of information that we've learned in the past couple of weeks and months. Our last two problems, they're already giving us a picture or a graph. We've actually done this before. We can find our slope from the graph and pick a point. Doesn't matter which one you do first, I'm going to count our slope from one point to the next. I'm going to count rise over run, so rise 1, 2, 3, 4, and run only just 1, 4 over 1. And our slope, or that's our slope, our point, I'm going to pick this point because they're positives, 4, 1. If you want to pick this one, that's fine. So use the information to write an equation in point-slope form. Point-slope form is y minus y1 equals our slope, x minus x1. Then it says convert or solve to get y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. So because we're solving, it's going to be easiest to not have this as a fraction. 4 divided by 1 is just 4 for our slope. So let's plug in what we know. This is x1 and y1. So we have y minus y1, which is just 1, equal to our slope, which is right here, 4. And then x minus x1, which is also 4. So we need to solve this or get y by itself. So first we have parentheses. We need to get rid of those, distribute 4 out front, and then x minus 4 on the top. 4 times x is 4x. 4 times -4 is, I know it's going to be a negative, 4 times 4 is 16. So I'm going to write what I have. I have y minus 1 equals 4x minus 16. And then my goal is to get y by itself, so I just need to get rid of the subtracting 1 by the opposite, which is adding 1. So 1 minus 1 is 0, so we just have y equals 4x. If I owe you $16, but now I give you $1, I only owe you now 15. They're different signs, so we really subtract. So here's our equation. We're done. This is the equation of this graph up here. Let's try the second one. Our slope, we need to count rise over run. So from here to here, I'm going to rise 1, 2, and run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have to leave that as a fraction. I can't simplify that. And then pick a point. We can pick 3, 2, or we can pick -2, 0. I like this one that has a 0 because it's easy to add and subtract 0. If you want to use this one because they're positives, that's fine. So I'm going to write my equation. I just copied that. And then we are going to plug in what we know. So let's plug in what we know. I know this is x and y, and that's my one point that I have. So it says y minus y1, which is 0. Remember, I said it was easy to add 0, subtract 0, same thing. M, which we found, our slope is 2 over 5. and then in parentheses x minus x1, which is a negative 2. Those two negatives there make a positive. So let's distribute like we've been doing. We have 2/5, and out front here on top we have x plus 2. So if I multiply 2/5 times x, it's still the same, 2/5 x. 2/5 times 2, though, might be a little bit more tricky. 2/5 times 2, 2 is really 2 over 1. So if I multiply that, 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 1 is still 5. So we have 4/5. And over here, y minus nothing is just y. So I have y equals 2/5 x plus 4/5. If you wanted to convert 4/5 to a decimal, I would also accept 0.8. So if you think about it, this is where we would cross our y-axis, b at the end, right? And it makes sense that we're not quite at 1, we're a little bit less, so 0.8 or 4/5. We're almost to 1 whole, but not quite yet. Alright, that is it for today. I know it seemed like a lot, but it's mostly things we've done before. So go ahead, we have 3 problems on the front and 3 on the back as well. Good luck.